My brother stole my car and crashed it, then my parents blamed me. You should have been more responsible, they said. So I let him handle the consequences. Alone. I worked hard for my car. It wasn't just some random vehicle I picked up on a whim, it was a symbol of everything I'd built for myself, every sacrifice, every late night, every early morning grind. I spent years saving up, working extra shifts, saying no to nights out, budgeting every single dollar just so I could afford something reliable, something that was mine. I wasn't about to settle for some junker that would break down in a month. This car was my reward, a tangible reminder that all my hard work meant something. Then there was my brother, Jason. Jason never had to work for anything. If he wanted something, he got it. No questions asked, no effort required. He was the golden child, the one my parents constantly made excuses for. He's just young, they'd say. He's still figuring things out. Meanwhile, at his age, I was already holding down a job, paying my own bills, and learning what responsibility actually meant. But Jason? Jason had never held a job longer than a couple of months, always quitting because it was too stressful or because his boss expected too much. And yet, every time he failed, my parents swooped in to clean up the mess, handing him whatever he needed to get by. So when I finally got my car, Jason's attitude was predictable. From the moment I pulled into the driveway, he acted like it was his. He didn't even congratulate me, didn't ask about all the work I'd put in to afford it. No, the first thing out of his mouth was, "So, when do I get to take it for a spin?" Like I was just supposed to hand him the keys because that's how life always worked for him. At first, I thought he was joking. But then he started dropping hints. "You know, you should let me drive it sometime. Come on, I bet I'd look amazing behind the wheel of this thing. I mean, what's the big deal? It's not like I'm gonna wreck it." Every time, I brushed it off. I'd just laugh, shake my head, tell him, "Not happening." But deep down, I knew Jason. I knew how careless he was, how little he respected boundaries. It wasn't a matter of if he would try to take my car, it was a matter of when. And my parents? Instead of telling him to back off, they enabled him. "Oh, don't be so uptight," Mom said once when I shut him down. "He's your brother. You act like he's gonna steal it or something," Dad added with a chuckle. They never saw Jason for what he was, a reckless, entitled brat who had never had to face the consequences of his actions. And I could feel it in my gut. Something bad was coming. I just didn't know how bad. I woke up that morning expecting it to be like any other day. But the second I looked out the window, my stomach dropped. My car was gone. At first, my brain struggled to process it. Maybe I had parked it somewhere else and just forgot? Maybe I was still half asleep, imagining things? But the more I looked, the more reality started to sink in. Someone had taken my car. Panic set in as I rushed outside, heart pounding, checking the driveway, the street, even the garage, anywhere it could have been moved. But it was nowhere to be seen. I grabbed my phone and started calling my parents, my neighbors, anyone who might have an answer. My parents didn't pick up, and neither did Jason. That's when it clicked. Jason. I sprinted back inside and pulled up the security footage from our front door camera. And there he was, Jason, sneaking out at 2 a.m., fumbling with my keys, slipping into the driver's seat, and taking off like it was his own. My hands were shaking as I called him again, but of course, no answer. I was about to head straight to my parents' house when my phone rang. But it wasn't Jason. It was the police. "Is this my name?" the officer on the line asked. My breath caught in my throat. "Yes, what's going on? We have a vehicle registered under your name that's been involved in an accident. We need you to come to the scene immediately." I didn't even hear the rest of what he said. I was already grabbing my keys, or what was left of them, and running out the door. When I got to the scene, it felt like my worst nightmare had come to life. My car, my beautiful, hard-earned car, was completely wrecked. The front end was smashed in, airbags deployed, glass shattered everywhere. The sight made me physically sick, and then there was Jason. Standing next to the wreckage, completely unharmed. He looked shaken, but not in the way someone should after crashing a car they stole. He looked like someone who just realized they got caught. The second he saw me, he gave this nervous, half laugh and shrug. Relax, it's just a car. Just a car. I couldn't even speak. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. Just a car? The car I spent years working for? The car I spent countless hours budgeting, saving, sacrificing for? The car that was my symbol of independence? And he had the audacity to stand there and say it was just a car? The officer walked up to me, notepad in hand. Are you the owner of this vehicle? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to answer. Yes. He stole it. Jason scoffed, rolling his eyes like I was overreacting. Geez, don't be dramatic. The officer's expression changed slightly. So, you're saying you didn't give him permission to drive the vehicle? I locked eyes with Jason, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something other than entitlement in his face. Fear. I turned back to the officer, speaking clearly. No. I did not give him permission. He stole my car. Jason started to protest, but the officer shut him down immediately. They had zero tolerance for this kind of situation. Jason wasn't just a reckless kid anymore, he had committed a crime, but he still didn't get it. He scoffed again, shaking his head, muttering under his breath. Whatever. Mom and Dad will take care of it. And that was the moment I knew. He still thought he was untouchable. He still thought there would be no consequences. But this time, he was dead wrong. I barely had time to process the wreckage of my car before my parents arrived at the scene, rushing toward Jason like he was the victim. Oh my God, Jason! Are you okay? My mom practically shoved past me, her hands on his face, checking for injuries that weren't even there. I stared in disbelief as my dad clapped him on the back, letting out a relieved sigh. Thank God you're not hurt, son. Cars can be replaced, but you can't. Meanwhile, my car, the one Jason stole and wrecked, was being loaded onto a tow truck, completely totaled. My mom turned to me, her face a mix of frustration and disappointment, and before I could even open my mouth, she hit me with, "How could you let this happen? Let this happen?" I blinked, sure I must have misheard. Are you serious right now? She sighed, crossing her arms. You should have hidden your keys better. You know how Jason is. He was just being impulsive. My dad nodded like this was some perfectly logical conclusion. Yeah, son, why weren't your keys somewhere safer? I was speechless. Actually speechless. Jason had literally stolen my car, crashed it, and now somehow, it was my fault? Jason, standing there like he didn't have a care in the world, just shrugged. It's not a big deal, guys. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. I had to force myself to unclench my fists. Are you all out of your minds? I gestured to the wreckage. He stole my car. He wrecked it. And now you're blaming me? My mom's face twisted like I was being completely unreasonable. Insurance will cover it, she said, like that was the point. You'll get another car. Jason made a mistake, but we're just glad he's safe. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They weren't even mad. They weren't even remotely upset with him. Jason grinned at that, shoving his hands in his pockets. See? Everything's fine. Everything's fine. My car was gone. My savings, gone. And Jason was standing there acting like he hadn't just completely destroyed something I had worked years for. And then, the final straw. My mom looked at me, exasperated, and said, I think you should apologize. I almost laughed. Apologize? For what? For yelling at Jason, she said, giving me this look like I was some kind of monster for being upset. He's already stressed enough. You don't need to make it worse. I felt something snap inside me. This was it. I was done. Done being the responsible one. Done paying the price for Jason's stupidity. Done with my parents coddling him while treating me like the bad guy for expecting basic accountability. I took a deep breath, stared at them, then at Jason, who was still smirking like he had won something. And I made my decision. Jason could deal with the consequences. Alone. The call from the insurance company came early the next morning. I had barely gotten any sleep, still replaying the wreckage in my mind, the look on Jason's smug face, and the sheer audacity of my parents blaming me for everything. I answered groggily, expecting a routine conversation, but what I got instead? Far worse. Unfortunately, since your brother took the vehicle without your permission, this falls under an unauthorized use case, the representative explained. Unless you officially report the vehicle as stolen, we can't process this as a covered incident. I sat up in bed, fully awake now. So you're telling me that if I don't press charges, I get nothing? Correct. We won't be able to reimburse you for the damages unless legal action is taken against the party responsible. I ran a hand down my face, letting that sink in. I already knew how my parents would react. Still, I had to try. I walked downstairs, where my mom and dad were casually sipping their coffee like nothing had happened. Jason was on the couch, flipping through his phone, not a care in the world. I didn't waste time. Insurance won't cover it unless I report the car as stolen. Jason barely glanced up. Cool. So just don't. Mom let out an annoyed sigh, like I was being difficult on purpose. You don't have to do that, sweetheart. It's just a car. We'll figure something out. I folded my arms. And by figure something out, you mean I just eat the loss? Dad gave me a disappointed look, like I was being selfish. It's not ideal, but these things happen. It's not worth ruining your relationship with your brother over money. Money, that's all it was to them. Not the years I spent saving. Not the sacrifices I made. Not the independence that car represented. Just money. I kept my voice steady. If I can't get my money back, then Jason will. Silence. Then Jason snorted. What money? I'm broke. I didn't blink. Then you better start looking for a second job. My parents looked horrified. Jason? He laughed. You wouldn't. I held up my phone, showing them the call history. I already spoke to insurance. I'm filing a report. Today. Mom's hand flew to her chest like I had just personally stabbed her. You are not calling the police on your own brother. Dad slammed his coffee mug down. You'd really do this to your family? Jason finally put his phone down, sitting up straight. Okay, let's all calm down. I shook my head. I am calm. And I'm done being the only one who takes responsibility in this family. I turned on my heel, walked out the front door, and drove straight to the police station. I could still hear their frantic voices behind me, yelling, begging, demanding that I let it go. I didn't. Filing the report was easier than I expected. They took my statement, asked for security footage, and just like that, Jason's name was on an official police report for vehicle theft. I stepped outside, exhaling for what felt like the first time in days. And then, the real panic started. Jason blew up my phone first. Dude, you need to fix this. They're saying I could get charged with Grand Theft Auto. Then my parents. You're being ridiculous. This is going too far. Just drop it before things get worse. But it was too late. Jason wasn't laughing anymore. Jason always had a way of escaping consequences. For as long as I could remember, every mistake he made was swept under the rug before it could actually affect him. Mom and Dad would step in, make excuses, and magically make his problems disappear. But this time, there was no escaping. The moment the charges were filed, reality started to crash down on him. At first, he tried to act like it was no big deal. He walked around the house muttering, "It'll get sorted out. They're not actually gonna do anything." Then came the court date. My parents begged me to drop the charges before it got that far. Mom cornered me in the kitchen, eyes red, voice shaking. Jason's your brother. You don't really want to do this to him, do you? Dad chimed in, his tone sharp. Family forgives, kid. This isn't how we handle things. I kept my voice calm. Family also respects each other. He didn't respect me when he stole my car. He didn't respect me when he wrecked it. So why should I respect him now? They had no answer for that. And I wasn't backing down. The day of his court appearance, Jason finally lost his cocky attitude. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just some kid who could charm his way out of trouble. He was a defendant. Mom and Dad were horrified at how serious it all became. They sat in the courtroom looking pale, like they had just realized their baby boy wasn't untouchable. Jason pled guilty to unauthorized use of a vehicle. The judge didn't throw the book at him, but he still felt it. A hefty fine. Mandatory community service. And worst of all, a record. It was minor, but it was still there. Suddenly, the world wasn't bending over backward for him anymore. When he tried to apply for a new credit card, declined. When he went to finance a new car, interest rate through the roof. When he tried to get a better job, his background check got flagged. The panic set in. I'll never forget the day he stormed into my apartment, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. "Dude, you have to help me fix this." I just raised an eyebrow. "Fix what?" "Your mess?" He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "I can't get a loan, I can't get a decent car, I can't even." He stopped, breathing hard. "I get it, okay? I screwed up. But I can't live like this forever." I leaned back in my chair. "Funny. I seem to remember telling you this would happen. But you laughed." His jaw clenched. "So what? You just want me to suffer?" I shrugged. "I want you to take responsibility." Jason stared at me, silent. He had never had to actually do that before. For the first time, he didn't know how. And my parents? They were tired. At first, they kept coddling him, telling him it would all be okay, trying to find some loophole to make his life easier. But when they realized there was nothing they could do, they started turning on him. Dad was the first to snap. "I told you to be more careful, Jason." "But no, you thought you were untouchable." Mom sighed every time she got a bill for one of his fines, rubbing her temples like she finally understood just how much damage he caused. Jason was alone in this. And for once, I didn't feel bad. The calls started slow. At first, just casual check-ins from my mom. "How are you doing?" she'd ask, like she actually cared about my answer. But I knew what was coming. The moment I said "I'm fine," she sighed dramatically and shifted the conversation. "You know, your brother is really struggling." Ah. There it was. I didn't say anything, just let her keep talking. "He's trying, sweetheart. He really is. But with the fines and the community service, it's just been so hard on him." I hummed, unimpressed. "Good. Maybe he'll learn something." That didn't go over well. Mom gasped like I'd just slapped her. "How can you say that? He's your brother." "Exactly. And he stole from me. It was just a car." The moment she said it, I felt my patience snap. I clenched my jaw, took a deep breath. "It was my car, Mom. That I worked for. That I paid for. That I needed. And he destroyed it because he thought he could do whatever he wanted." "And you still don't see a problem with that?" She stuttered, clearly caught off guard that I wasn't backing down. Of course, it was wrong, but... No buts. Silence. Then the real guilt trip began. Family doesn't do this to each other. I almost laughed. "Oh, but stealing my car and crashing it was fine? You're supposed to look out for him," she said weakly. "That's what big brothers do." I scoffed. "I've looked out for him my entire life. And what did that get me? A wrecked car and a family that blamed me for it." She kept trying, but I wasn't having it. Then came the final straw. "Listen," she said, her voice softer, more careful. "Your father and I were talking, and, well, we were hoping you could help him out." "Help him out how?" I asked, already knowing where this was going. "Well," she hesitated, "Jason's really struggling with all these fines and expenses. And since you're doing okay, we thought maybe you could, you know, help him pay them off." I burst out laughing. It wasn't even forced laughter. It was genuine, from the gut. "Cannot believe this laughter." Wait, I said, wiping my eyes. "So let me get this straight. Jason stole my car, wrecked it, left me without transportation, and made me go through all this mess, and now you want me to pay for his debts?" Mom's voice was small now. "Just a little bit. Just to help him get back on his feet." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I already paid more than enough, Mom." She was silent. "I lost my car. I lost my insurance coverage. I lost time dealing with all this nonsense. That's more than enough help for a lifetime." She tried again. "But honey, he's family. And I'm not his safety net." I hung up. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. The call stopped. The guilt trips faded. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't before: peace. No more lectures about family loyalty. No more last-minute requests for money. No more watching Jason skate through life while I got punished for being responsible. I was done. And the best part? I finally replaced my car. On my own terms. No guilt. No feeling like I had to justify it. No worrying about Jason somehow getting his hands on it. This one was mine, fully mine. The first time I sat behind the wheel, I let out a deep breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It felt good. Like a fresh start. Meanwhile, Jason? He was finally facing the real world, without me to clean up after him. He had to get a job, his first real job ever. He had to make actual payments, deal with actual responsibilities, and learn what it was like to struggle. For the first time, he wasn't getting a free pass. And my parents? They were bitter. They tried, a few more times, to get me to make amends. They threw in lines about how family should stick together and how things weren't the same without me. I didn't budge, because for once, they had to sit with the consequences of the child they enabled. And me? I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel obligated. I didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of someone else's mistakes. I just felt free. Because some people only learn responsibility when they finally lose the people who carried them their whole lives.